Hello and welcome to the Fit to Transform podcast, where you learn how to train and diet effectively and, most importantly, how to maintain those results for life, once and for all. I'm Nikias Tomasiello, a transgender training and nutrition coach working online with anyone who's ready for a true lifestyle transformation, anywhere they may be in the world. As a friendly reminder, any and all information provided is for educational purposes only. You should consult with your doctor before implementing any changes to your diet and exercise program. With that disclaimer out of the way, thank you for being here. Now grab yourself a cup of tea or pre-workouts and enjoy.
Yo, dear listeners, hello and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for tuning in to this solo episode. If you keep self-sabotaging your fat loss diet, this is the episode you want to listen to because I am going to talk you through 6 of the most common reasons for fat loss self-sabotage that I have heard in more than half a decade of coaching over 100 people from all walks of life. And I'm going to give you the solutions that I found to work for many of them. However, be warned, because if one of these reasons resonates, it's going to hit you right in the solar plexus. And I say that because some of these reasons resonate with me as well. So let's get started with reason number 1. You are overcommitting. You slash your calories too low and or cut out all sugar, fat, and joy from your lifestyle. You plan more resistance training workouts than you can stick to. And you do the same with cardio. You can grit your teeth and push yourself for a week, 2, even 3, but at some point you just can't do it anymore. And you get angry and frustrated because you were doing so well, except you were secretly resenting your diet because it was too restrictive, and you were just putting up with the workouts because you were scared of not seeing progress otherwise. This does not sound fun at all. So no wonder you can't keep it up for more than a few weeks. Instead, pace yourself better. Commit to the most aggressive deficit that you have the skills to be consistent with right now, without hitting the proverbial fuck it button and self-sabotage every couple of weeks. Even if it isn't the calorie deficit that you want to be in, even if you'd like to be losing fat at a faster pace. Stick to the pace that's actually going to work, even if it's the slower one. Because if you try the faster pace and you lose fat for 2 weeks and then you regress for 1 week, you're actually moving forward 1 week every 3. Whereas if you were to take the slower pace, which you can be consistent with, now you're making progress every single week. In addition to that, commit to a flexible approach to food instead of depriving yourself of everything that you like, because this also helps to keep the fuck it impulse at bay. Last but not least, commit to a training program that you like or that at least you do not hate, because I appreciate that not everybody is going to love exercise. And commit to a program which you can actually adhere to for the long haul. If you tried 5 days and always ended up skipping one, choose 4 days instead. Basically, make it easier for yourself, not harder. Harder will backfire, and you know that already because you've been doing this a while and it always has. Number 2, you're not tracking all of the data that you need to track. You track calories when you're being good, in quotation marks, but not when you're overeating. That's why you think you need to diet on very low calories. Because despite the fact that you're eating 1400 calories, supposedly, you're not losing weight, or worse, you're gaining weight. But you're not eating 1400 calories on average. You're eating 1400 tracked calories Monday to Friday, then you're eating 3000 untracked calories Saturday to Sunday. You're actually eating 1,857 calories per day on average, which is over 400 calories every single day, in addition to the 1,400 calories that you've been tracking Monday to Friday. That's why you're not losing body fat at all, or not at the pace that you expected. It's not because you should diet on 1,400 calories. In fact, I would argue that you could most likely diet on a little bit higher of a calorie intake if you were to actually track it properly. And that's because one of the main reasons many people overeat is that they feel over restricted. So you're overeating and you're not losing weight at the pace that you would want or at all. Therefore, you tell yourself that you need to eat a very low amount of calories, like 1400. This makes you feel over restricted and you end up overeating. It's a snake that bites its own tail. Whereas if you track every single day, even the days that you don't like, you're going to collect data that's going to prove to you that you're not, in fact, eating only 1,400 calories. You're eating 1,800, which is why you're not losing weight at the pace that you would want. And instead of dropping every single day to 1,400 calories, which is not happening because it's the 1,400 calories Monday to Friday that's making you overeat Saturday and Sunday, try a slightly higher caloric intake of 1,600 calories that you track every single day. And you can have a slightly lower calorie day here and there at 1,500 to save some calories for a social event on the Saturday and Sunday. For sure. And that is going to likely lead to you feeling less over restricted. You're going to feel more in control. You're going to be able to eat more mindfully. And as a result, you're not going to have an out of control eating episode both Saturday and Sunday where you're eating 3,000 plus calories. Listen, I know that tracking calories on a day that you're not happy about is not easy and it's not pleasant because having had that overeating episode makes you feel out of control. But it's not the same as killing people. It's not a crime against humanity that you have to hide or hate yourself for. And it's this lack of data that's holding you back. So stop sweeping this kind of day under the rug and start tracking it because having all the data is going to empower you. You find out that you can have a much more sustainable calorie deficit and see results by focusing on your real average caloric intake over time, not just the Monday to Friday intake that you keep really, really low. I do want to caveat this second reason that I've just talked you through by saying that this does not necessarily apply to people with actually diagnosable binge eating disorder. I do not believe that people with this kind of disorder would necessarily benefit from tracking the calories and macros on days when they have a binge in the eating disorder sense. I want to put that caveat out there because I don't know who's listening to this. And if you do suffer from binge eating disorder, you need to work with somebody who specializes in that, and that is not me. But if you do not have binge eating disorder, then I strongly believe that tracking days when you feel out of control around food, days when you eat something that you consider a bad food, so to speak, or junk food, as people say, is going to make you feel empowered and it is going to help stop the self sabotage game. Reason number three, you never actually practice maintenance calories. And I get it. When you feel like you keep hitting the fuck it button and not making the progress that you want to make, taking a break from fat loss seems counterintuitive. You're already going at a snail's pace, and now you're supposed to go even slower by increasing your calories to maintenance? I get that. And you may also be afraid of gaining weight. You're thinking, I'm supposed to be in a deficit, but I'm plateaued because I keep hitting the fuck it button and self sabotage. If I increase my calories to maintenance, overeating like I'm doing now will make me gain weight. And that is also a valid fear. But in my experience, a break from a deficit when you're already stressed out because it's not going well, this is also a valid fear. But in my experience, a break from a deficit at the appropriate time will help prevent future overeating, not cause more of it. The thing is, there's a reason you're smashing that fuck it button like it's a quiz bowl buzzer. If you've stayed in a deficit for a long time, then you've accumulated some diet fatigue. You've been careful with what and how much you eat for weeks. You've been training hard and getting your steps in. And you've spent a lot of willpower on saying no to certain foods and social events. Moreover, a calorie deficit takes a physiological toll on the body as well, and these factors combined generate diet fatigue. Everyone has a certain diet fatigue threshold above which continuing to stay in a deficit becomes a real slog. You're hungry, you're tired, you're moody, you don't want to eat another chicken breast or rack up 10,000 steps again. You just want a goddamn cookie and you're cursing whatever god made cookies contain 300 plus calories apiece. This is the perfect time for a break at maintenance calories to be beneficial. You get a chance to be more flexible with food because of the increased calorie budget, and you get a chance to practice maintaining the results you've achieved so far. This respite gives your mind and body a chance to recover from the diet fatigue and thus hit the ground running again with the deficit, with fewer fuck it moments. And if you want to learn more about taking a break from a deficit and why that's beneficial, I do have a podcast episode on that very topic. Look up episode number 53, why you stop sticking to your diet and what to do about it. Now, you might be thinking, but Nick, I'm self sabotaging here. I'm plateaued. I'm not losing weight. So why are you talking about diet fatigue? The reason is that even if you are not technically in a deficit, in that you've been losing body fat, even if you've been plateaued because you're trying for a deficit, but you're not actually achieving it, you're still in what I call the fat loss mindset, which I actually talked about on one of my most recent interviews with Coach Ruby. That was episode 145, How Your Fat Loss Mindset is Sabotaging Your Physique Goals. What I mean by fat loss mindset is the fact that you are focusing on the goal of losing body fat, whether you are achieving it or not. You are still experiencing the mental component of diet fatigue, where you're still careful and disciplined about what you eat and the social events involving food that you attend, the drinks that you have, the food that you have. It does take a toll on you psychologically to do that. And then you top that with the toll that hitting the fuck it button also takes on you because it makes you feel out of control, it makes you feel angry and frustrated. Combine these two, and you can still accumulate psychological, if not physiological, diet fatigue. And when that goes on and on and on for weeks on end, at some point you've got to do something different. And often taking a break from the deficit and using it as a reset to focus on your habits and figuring out a plan that's more sustainable for you is going to propel you forward when you feel ready to get back into a deficit. Moving on to reason number 4, you let the scale have power over you. And that's one that really hits me in the solar plexus. If it's only a good day when the scale is going down, you're going to self sabotage every phase of the physique development process, not just fat loss. In a deficit, you'll be tempted to hit the fuck it button when you've been good for days and yet the scale isn't going down fast enough. And again, I'm using good in quotation marks. Worse still, you'll be tempted to do something drastic to make the scale go down at all costs, like lowering your calories too much or adding a bunch of cardio you don't actually have the time or energy for. Sound familiar? As a result of this, you may get a short term drop on the scale, but then you end up hitting the fuck it button later when the hunger and or the exhaustion from these extreme methods catch up with you. Then at maintenance calories, you'll be tempted to keep your calories below your real maintenance because every time you increase them, the scale inevitably goes up, which is normal when transitioning out of a deficit. Finally, in a surplus, you'll be terrified every time you gain half a pound, and you keep flip flopping between cutting and bulking. As a result of this, instead of being in an intentional surplus for enough months to make some actual gains, you're going to alternate a couple of weeks in a surplus with a couple of weeks in a deficit, which ultimately leads to some disappointing wheel spinning. And I said that this hits me right in the solar plexus because I've lived this all myself. In fact, I'm still working on my relationship with the scale to this day, even though I am miles ahead of where I used to be, when it would hold me back from getting the best results I would have been capable of. For example, I still remember when I went on my first alleged bulk back in early 2019. It was right after my first cut, which had actually gone really well. And what happened was that I would tell myself, you're going to eat in a surplus. And I did for all of a week. Then the scale would go up by a pound, typically just because of an increase in water weight, food in my gut, carbohydrates. You know the drill by now if you've listened to this podcast long enough. It wasn't actual fat loss or actual muscle yet, but I would be so terrified of that increase on the scale that I would think, wow, I'm in too big of a surplus. I would drop my calories back down. And then it would turn out that I was actually at maintenance calories the whole time. It was only after I came back from an injury, the only big injury I've had in training so far, knock on wood, that I actually told myself, you wasted all those months. I wasted all of at least 4 months. And then I got injured, took a month to recover. I went back to the gym around June since January 2019. I told myself, enough is enough. Either you bulk or you stop lying to yourself. And you know the most ironic part of this vicious cycle, looking back on it now? My goal was never a number on the scale. It was, and it still is, a visual change in my physique. But since I was chasing that number, I was not consistent with the behaviors that I needed in order to achieve the visual change in muscle growth that I wanted. And you're doing the same because every time that the behaviors you need to follow affect the scale in a way that makes you uncomfortable, then you bail and you hit the fuck it button. Instead, you want to use the scale as one of your tools to track changes over time, not the only tool, and you want to remember that that number is not the goal. And if you want to learn more about interpreting scale weight data correctly so that it doesn't have power over you, guess what? I have a podcast on that. And that's episode 30, How to Use the Scale as a Tool for Fat Loss and Muscle Gain. Reason number 5, you are too self critical. Tell me about it. I'm very self critical myself. But here's some more poetic irony for you. If you tear yourself a new one every time you make the smallest mistake, eventually you'll hit the fuck it button and use food as a comfort against the negative emotions that you yourself triggered. For instance, it's very common to go out for a meal without much of a plan. You just tell yourself, I'll have a salad with the dressing on the side and I'll be fine. But it's not fine. For one reason or another, you eat more than you wanted, and you choose foods that you did not want to choose, and it makes you feel like utter crap. Guilt squeezes your stomach in a vice like grip. Shame makes your throat close up. Why do you keep doing this? You ask yourself. You'll never lose this weight if you don't stop fucking it up. You call yourself weak, stupid, worthless. That's when the fuck it moment happens. It will never work. That's what you're thinking. So what's the point? And you start comfort eating to soothe these negative emotions. If this sounds a little too real, It's because this is how I used to talk to myself whenever I, in quotation marks, fucked it up. In one of the darkest times of my life so far, it was the voice of the eating disorder I had. Since I'm a little insane, I'd comfort starve instead of comfort eating, which is how I developed anorexia nervosa. But I've also helped countless clients who resort to comfort eating instead. And the horrible feelings are the same. We just have different coping mechanisms. Whichever your self destructive form of comfort is, the only way out is not to stop making mistakes, because that's impossible. It's to stop making every small mistake into a bigger deal than it needs to be. Acknowledge the fall, pick yourself back up, and carry on. A meal gone pear shaped is not the same as fucking it up forever. You've got this. And this is the final but not least important of the six reasons, and it's that you do not trust yourself to be able to achieve your goal. You tell yourself, I've failed so many times. Why should this be any different? You tell yourself this every time you start a new diet, whether you're aware of it or not. You feel like you've tried them all. Even when you did lose a little weight, it would always come back on. It seems like you are never going to change. When subconsciously you don't believe that you can do something, then you self sabotage in small ways without even noticing. One day you don't track a cookie, another day you skip a workout. None of these are a big deal, but they will compound over time until all of a sudden you're stuck again. Predictably, you don't see the results you want, but your perception is that you're still working hard to get them. It's not the reality, because in truth, you are self sabotaging and therefore you're not in an actual deficit. But you cannot see that, and it's frustrating as fuck. And then that frustration compounds, and eventually, you already know what I'm going to say. Yes, it's the fuck it button again. And every time you get into this cycle, you erode your self trust a little bit more, like waves crashing against a shore and dragging away with them a little bit of soil every time, until there's very little left of the original coast. But you don't just pull self trust out of your ass. I'd be a very rich man if I could do that for all my clients. You have to work to build self trust. And the key is to give yourself evidence that you can do it, which only happens when you commit to a plan that gives you results. And if you're in the right place to hire one, a coach can expedite this process tenfold. For one, they're going to design an effective plan for you so you have more confidence that it will work than if you had to come up with something based on all the confusing information on the internet when you don't have fitness related expertise because it isn't your job. The coach also has a wealth of experience helping many other people like you, which is reassuring in and of itself. Furthermore, thanks to their experience, the coach can lay all of your fears at rest. They can answer all your questions and they can give you a much needed pep talk whenever your motivation wavers and self doubt creeps in again. Because it will happen, and that's okay. We all have self doubt. Last but not least, when you don't trust yourself, having a coach who tells you, I believe in you, is a game changer. That's why, even as a coach myself, I've had two coaches so far and plan to work with more in the future for this very reason. I have the knowledge I need to make progress towards my fitness goals, but those coaches' support in keeping my own self doubt at bay has been invaluable. So invaluable, in fact, that I strive to do the same for all my clients who need it. You deserve to trust yourself. And not because I'm a hashtag toxic positivity coach and fart unicorns and rainbows all day long. It's because this self trust is key to stop self sabotaging. And these are all the 6 reasons I wanted to tell you about. In summary, to stop hitting that fuck it button, to stop that self-sabotage and finally lose the fat, don't overcommit. Track all of the data. Practice maintenance calories at the right time. Don't let the scale have power over you. Don't make a small mistake into a bigger deal than it needs to be, and build self-trust. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. As you can tell, I get very passionate about this topic because mindset, in my view, is the foundation of results, and mindset is my jam as a coach. And if that resonates with you and you are looking for a coach, then you can apply for one-to-one online coaching via the links in the show notes. And if you want to support the podcast, a 5-star rating and/or a review on the podcast platform that you're listening to this on would be fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me today, and I look forward to talking to you in the next episode.
Lastly, if you want to support the podcast and help me reach more people, please leave a 5-star rating or review on any podcast platform that you're using. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.